What's your favorite subject?
She was a struggling single mom doing everything she could.
You guys want to play a game?
Yeah.
She was dedicated to her children.
She showed them that she loved them.
To see her evolve into a mother was a beautiful thing.
Until it all came to a horrific end.
It was a bloody crime scene.
One of the worst cases I've ever looked at.
Who does this?
Was it the father of her oldest?
He was hustling.
He was always in and out of jail.
Was it the married man who'd been keeping her a secret?
There has to be an underlying personality disorder there to live a double lifestyle.
Do you want to tell me why I got a call today from your wife?
You throw infidelity into the mix, and that complicates things.
Or was it the new man in her life?
He became a little bit obsessed, like talking crazy.
He was sending threatening letters.
When the investigation begins, only one thing is certain.
You don't know the monster that's lying inside people.
Can't love a monster.
November 20th, 2010. It's a quiet Saturday morning in Tallahassee, Florida. A city of 200,000 that's not on many tourist itineraries.
Tallahassee area is a very complex city. Not only is it the capital, but it is a college town with numerous campuses in the area.
Mostly it's a nice, tranquil community, great place to raise a family.
But for one Tallahassee family, this Saturday is anything but tranquil.
Hey, it's Brandy. Leave a message.
Hey, Brandy, it's Mom again. Give me a call when you get this.
Brandy's family members hadn't heard from her, which was very unusual.
Her mother was starting to feel that unsettling feeling.
And as her worry grows, Brandy's mother makes another call.
Brandy's mother called a neighbor who lived across the street.
She had her go over and see if she was all right.
It's probably nothing, but...
It's no problem at all. I was just walking out the door anyway. I'm gonna call you back, okay?
That intuition is not something that is easily ignored.
When the neighbor gets to Brandy's house, her mother's intuition proves correct.
Brandy? She looked through the window and saw Brandy Peters' body there in the foyer.
Brandy!
27-year-old Brandy Peters grew up in a tight-knit family.
She was very family-oriented. Loved the family.
They spent a lot of time together. She was definitely very loved.
You could even say she was a little spoiled.
She was the baby. So I would say she probably was the diva of the family.
She was real feisty.
And she always turned the boys' heads.
She was into dressing nice. She was a beautiful girl. Guys was after her.
But Brandy had her sights on something different. At 21, she started dating a man named Mario Michaels.
He was much older than us.
It wasn't exactly the most stable of relationships. It was very tumultuous.
He was always in and out of jail.
But when Mario wasn't behind bars, there was little doubt they were in love.
They had a good relationship.
They also had 2 children together, twin girls.
She took on that motherly role. She loved them.
But with Mario frequently out of the picture, Brandy was often raising the kids on her own.
It was very difficult for Brandy.
Because it's a struggle doing it by yourself.
What she needed was someone she could depend on. Someone who wasn't Mario.
She was looking for someone who had a good job, had his head on his shoulder, wasn't in and out of jail, and could be a part of the kid's life.
Brandy thought she might have found him in 28-year-old Henry Segura.
Her and Henry met at a gas station, traded numbers.
How are you?
I'm good.
When they started dating, it looked as if Henry checked all the boxes.
He wasn't in the streets. He wasn't a convicted felon. He wasn't living that lifestyle.
He also had a good job.
How was the drive over?
He was an over-the-road welder.
He traveled from job site to job site.
And he was good with her kids.
He had actually a very close relationship with the twins.
She thought she had someone that was different. She thought she had met the real thing.
There was only one problem.
Do you want to tell me why I got a call today from your wife?
Henry Segura was married.
I'm sorry.
The news came as quite a shock to Brandy.
I didn't mean for all this to happen.
Why didn't you tell me?
Look, it's not what you think.
Henry told Brandy that he and his wife were on the verge of splitting up.
That can be really challenging, wanting them to choose you and remaining in that situation.
A situation made even more difficult by the fact that Brandy was carrying Henry's son.
What do we do now?
It's going to be fine. I'm not going anywhere.
He has displayed himself as a decent provider, father figure to the girls, and now it's like I'm having his child, so I have to weigh my options. And she stayed.
But after the birth of their child, Brandy came to a realization.
It became clear to her that he had no intention of leaving his wife.
She said, I'll always be a number 2 or 3 in this person's life.
Brandy broke things off with Henry and spent the next 2 years starting over as a single mom.
She was just trying to get on her feet.
To be there for 3 children is not easy.
But she rose to the occasion.
She got a new home and a new job.
She was doing home health. She was a home health aide.
She was looking forward to what the future holds.
Only now, the bright future Brandy imagined may never come to pass.
Unable to get a hold of Brandy, her mother called a neighbor to go knock on Brandy's door.
Brandy!
She saw her laying in the foyer. She saw a large amount of blood.
Brandy!
And called law enforcement.
When officers arrive on scene, they make forced entry into the home.
She's inside.
But there's nothing they can do for Brandy.
She had gunshot wounds. There appeared to be trauma to her head.
She was dead at the scene.
Then, responding officers clear the rest of Brandy's house.
The officers had to make sure there weren't any other victims, but also make sure the suspect isn't there.
There's no sign of the shooter.
But in the bathroom, the officers made a horrific discovery.
Hey, we got more bodies in here.
They found the 3 children in the bathtub.
The children were dead.
Single mother Brandy Peters had spent the past 2 years creating a stable life for her 3 children after ending her relationship with the father of her youngest.
She was married the whole time.
Because it had been a struggle, but she was really starting to get focused on, let me get the kids settled in school, let me focus on where I need to take my career.
But now, Brandy's fresh start has come to a tragic end.
Brandy and her 3 children are dead.
No one had had any contact with her since the night before.
When homicide detectives arrive at the scene, they start by examining Brandy's body, which lies just inside the front door.
There was a bloody crime scene right there in the foyer.
She'd been beaten and has what appear to be gunshot wounds.
Suspiciously, though, no casings were there. So that tells us 2 things. Either it was cleaned up or someone used a revolver.
And while Brandy died in the foyer, detectives can tell the attack wasn't confined to that area.
A violent struggle occurred in there.
There was a large amount of blood down the hallway.
The children, on the other hand, appear to have been drowned.
The person who committed the crime ended up putting all 3 children in the bathtub together.
Who does this? Who would kill kids and then not only that, but drown them in a bathtub?
That's just not something you see very often.
While the CSI team finishes inside, detectives speak with the neighbor who found Brandy.
The neighbor was a good friend of Brandy's. They would go to pick up their children together from school.
She had no idea who might have done this.
Brandy, she's good people.
When the detectives talk to other neighbors, they're just as shocked by what happened.
There was a lot of community concern. This is a small little raise your family type of community, and not that's ever supposed to happen, but you definitely don't want it happening here.
However, while the neighbors are understandably worried about a killer coming into their community, the detectives don't believe they're dealing with a random crime.
There was no forced entry into the residence, so that led them to believe that she must have known this person.
A lack of forced entry isn't the only thing that suggests Brandy knew her killer.
It was just such a brutal attack. Gunshot after gunshot and blow after blow. Law enforcement thought it was very personal.
Is that what detectives are dealing with here? Eager to find out, they turn to Brandy's family, who have started arriving at the scene as word of the murders spreads.
It was just a tough moment that day, you know, when get a phone call saying Brandy and the girls had been killed.
I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you a few questions first.
We really were trying to gather as much information. We were doing that the best we can.
It was tough. This is something that happened at your back door with your own family.
Oh, I can't believe it. I just saw them.
When was that?
Oh, yesterday, around 5 o'clock.
She was supposed to take the twins with her for a sleepover, but the twins didn't want to go.
And that was the last time you saw her?
Yeah. We talked a little later on the phone around 7, but she didn't answer again after that.
Turning to Brandy's relationships, her mother says she never approved of Henry Segura, her grandson's father.
She made me aware that Henry was married.
Was Brandy okay with that?
For the most part.
She was like, it is what it is.
What about Henry's wife?
He went back to her.
She said Henry didn't really come around much after the baby was born.
He would bring diapers over, but he couldn't really be involved.
And the twins' dad?
Mario? Yeah, he's around.
Mario would bring them birthday presents. Mario would bring them Christmas gifts. They did communicate.
But Brandy's mother said she's not a big fan of Mario either.
He was in the streets, putting the streets first.
However, that isn't the only thing Brandy's mother has against Mario.
According to Brandy's mother, Mario was a deadbeat dad.
She just took him to court.
The week of the homicide, he was ordered to pay child support.
How much did he owe?
Around $20,000, maybe a little more.
Detectives investigating the murder of Brandy Peters and her 3 children have learned a judge recently ordered her ex-boyfriend, Mario Michaels, to pay Brandy more than $20,000 in back child support.
Often individuals would prefer not to go through the state. They can resolve those disputes amicably. And it sounds like that was the only option that she felt like she had at that point.
She said, if you're not gonna be a stand-up guy, then I'm gonna have to go another route with your child support.
Could the judgment against Mario have anything to do with the murders?
He definitely is a person of interest.
And the detectives won't have any trouble finding him.
He was beside himself with grief. This man was hurt.
But just because Mario was showing emotion still doesn't mean he'd do it.
Questioned by the detectives, Mario insists he didn't have anything to do with the murders.
How did you hear about what happened?
He explained to me that he got word through the grapevine, so to speak, that an incident had occurred.
Well, we heard that you and Brandy weren't getting along too well.
That was just money issues. He didn't deny that he'd have problems with Brandy over the thousands owed in child support.
I know I owe her, I just don't have it.
He provided us information about Brandy, their relationship, his relationship with his daughters.
He definitely wouldn't have hurt his own girls. He loved those twins.
Okay, so where were you last night?
With my girlfriend at a motel.
He was cooperative with police as far as giving them information.
Why don't you and I go talk?
Not only was Mario cooperative, it appears he is telling the truth.
When the detectives followed up on his alibi, the motel had a record of him being there that night. And his girlfriend said he never left the room.
Thank you so much.
With Mario apparently in the clear, detectives move on to Henry Segura, the father of Brandy's youngest child.
He agreed to come to talk with us. He was very even-keeled, very calm, very cordial, but that's not unusual. Everybody grieves differently.
And when detectives asked about his relationship with Brandy, Henry admitted it was complicated.
It started off as an affair, and it was supposed to go into something else, but for whatever reason, that never transpired. But he and Brandy were working it out.
What kind of person is she?
Spunky. She's down to earth. She's real sweet. She's a cool person.
But he says things went downhill with Brandy once his wife learned about the affair.
She caught me on the phone bill one day. Seen the phone bill, saying I was calling this number a lot.
Henry said his wife had confronted Brandy about the affair.
She just would tell her, stop messing with me and yada, yada, yada.
But Brandy was kind of like throwing gas on the fire.
She texted my wife, called her something fat, something.
According to Henry, that's when he decided to cut things off.
I said, I'm tired of being disrespectful to my wife. I said, I don't think maybe mess around with her.
He had to break it off with Brandy, and he got back with his wife.
But investigators wonder, was this too little, too late?
Your wife doesn't like Brandy, does she?
She didn't like very much, no. Unless she wouldn't kill her.
But would Henry?
They asked him when was the last time he had seen Brandy.
I was in her house Wednesday.
This past Wednesday?
That's 48 hours before the killings.
What are you doing here? What's going on?
Just saying it Wednesday.
Okay.
Henry explains that he couldn't see his son as often as he'd liked.
That was my first time going there in a while.
But he said he was trying to do right by them.
I put myself on child support.
So she never filed the paperwork for it, you did it?
I did it myself.
Henry also has an alibi for the evening of the murder.
He said, I was at home. He told them, you can check my cell phone. check with my wife.
Are there any other numbers?
He even agrees to give detectives a DNA sample.
He was cooperative.
And when the detectives pull his cell phone records, they confirm that he was home on the evening of the murder.
His wife also told police that she and Henry spent the evening at home.
Okay, bye-bye.
However, just as the investigation seems to be at a dead end,
Homicide, Lewis.
a friend of Brandy's contacts the detectives with a new lead.
I have some information. I'm not sure if it's connected, but I thought you should know.
She said Brandy had been in contact with a federal prison inmate named Enrique Sanchez.
Enrique has been writing letters to Brandy.
These letters that he sent, they were threatening.
A friend of Brandy Peters has told the detectives investigating her murder that the mother of three had been corresponding with a prison inmate named Enrique Sanchez.
This girl, her peoples was, locked up, and she had somebody that was looking for someone to be a pen pal with.
Mr. Sanchez sent Brandy letters from the Department of Corrections.
For the person serving time, it helps them feel like they have someone in their corner. They don't feel like they have to do that time alone.
And Brandy got something out of it too.
She's a single mom. She has 3 kids. She has a lot going on in her life. So to be able to communicate with someone and have a connection with someone that you really don't have to make time for, that might have been something that she was able to gain that connection and that stimulation from, but not devote a lot of her actual energy or time to.
But their casual relationship eventually took a serious turn.
Yeah, he actually proposed to her.
Enrique told Brandy he wasn't just any inmate.
And he said that he was a high-level member of a criminal organization out of Chicago and promised Brandy fortune just to marry him.
The friend admits that Brandy was intrigued by Enrique's offer.
But she also wondered if it was a little too good to be true.
She was really hesitant.
Brandy became suspicious of Mr. Sanchez.
According to Brandy's friend, when she declined Enrique's offer, he refused to take no for an answer.
He became a little bit obsessed, just, like talking crazy.
And 2 days before the murder, Enrique sent Brandy a menacing letter. And in the letter, he accused her of being disloyal.
Was it just a coincidence? Or did it have something to do with Brandy's death?
If Enrique was some sort of gang leader, he could have arranged a hit.
It was such a violent crime. I don't know of another crime as violent as this in Tallahassee. Thank you.
When the detectives received the autopsy results, there's no doubt they're dealing with a cold-hearted killer.
Brandy was shot 8 times.
They've also found evidence that one of the children had been shot.
We thought all 3 were drowned. We found one was shot in the head.
2 of those children were alive when they were put in that bathtub, and their 3rd sibling was used to hold them down. I don't even know what to say. It's awful.
To explore the possibility that Brandy and her children were the victims of a gang hit, the detectives set up an interview with Enrique in federal prison.
During an investigation, we have to go down every single lead.
Okay, yes, she turned down my proposal, but that doesn't mean that I killed her.
However, he does repeat the claim that he's a high-ranking member of the powerful Vice Lords gang.
Mr. Sanchez said that he was involved in various other criminal activities that were somewhat high profile. Gave us quite the story.
But detectives came away from the interview suspecting it was just that, a story.
And we pretty much figured out that he wasn't fully there.
There definitely are indicators that he's suffering from a severe mental illness.
And when detectives did a little digging, they discovered he wasn't in prison for anything gang-related.
The reason why he's incarcerated was for sending threatening letters to governors.
And he was someone who kind of perpetually took credit for a lot of different crimes.
With Enrique looking like a dead end, the detectives regroup.
Hoping for a new lead, they subpoenaed Brandy's cell phone records.
When we're doing a homicide investigation, it's like casting a net for fishing to see what comes back.
The records show that on the day of the murder, Brandy had been in frequent contact with a number registered to a man named Aaron Bishop.
So we immediately had an interview with him.
Do you know a woman named Brandy Peters?
No, I never heard of her.
Figuring they've caught Aaron in a lie, the detectives confront him about the calls from his phone.
Aaron's like, what? Hold on, what phone?
When detectives explained, he said he'd given that phone to a coworker.
This coworker had the name?
Yes, Henry Segura.
Which means that shortly before her death, Brandy had been on the phone with her ex-boyfriend.
Detectives investigating the murder of Brandy Peters and her 3 children have reason to believe she'd been in contact with her ex, Henry Segura, in the hours leading up to the murders.
It started when they traced the number from Brandy's phone records to a friend of Henry's named Aaron Bishop.
They worked together doing jobs on the welding site.
We were out on the job and I messed up my phone.
He had spilt a drink on top of the phone and the phone stopped working.
Put in some rice.
Aaron says he'd given the phone to Henry.
Henry takes the phone, puts it in a bag of rice, which is a technique to dry out your phone, and he realized that it still worked.
He asked me if I wanted it back, but I'd already got a new one, so I said he could keep it.
So now Henry thought in his mind, well, oh, okay, cool. I have a second phone that doesn't have my name on it.
Remember, that's how Henry's wife initially found out about his affair with Brandy.
She caught me on the phone bill.
Had he also lied about having a second phone?
Are there any other numbers?
To be sure, the detectives subpoena the tower records for Aaron's old phone.
What they learned could be the key to solving this case.
That phone was at Brandy Peters' house the night of the murder.
Literally on top of the crime scene, right on top of it. And it had been there for hours prior to the murder.
All the detectives need to do now is prove that it was Henry doing the stalking. And the phone records may reveal a way to do it.
Brandy's number wasn't the only one that popped up in the phone records.
Whoever had the phone had also been in regular contact with a number registered to a woman named Letitia Lyle.
Hello?
They spoke to her and she confirmed she was talking to Henry Segura on that phone.
The phone came up under another name, but it was always Henry.
So, why did he use another phone?
Well, he's married.
She was another girl he was having a relationship with.
She was enamored with Henry Segura. She thought that this was a relationship that was going to go somewhere.
But Letitia says she'd recently seen another side of Henry.
He had anger problems.
She noticed how much of a temper that he had.
Like, he put his hands on you?
No, nothing like that. He was just angry all the time.
What about?
This girl, he said she was always trying to put a kid on him.
According to Letitia, he just was venting about Brandy and the situation about the child support. And the fact that he had to pay this money to Brandy for a child that he didn't even think was his.
Which sounds an awful lot like a motive for murder.
I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
After Letitia confirms that Henry had a second secret phone, the detectives bring him in for another round of questioning.
What's your other cell phone number?
I have another cell phone.
Of course, the detectives know that's not true.
I know you have a second.
Once he realizes the detectives have caught him in the lie, he admits he had another phone. In the past.
That was a while ago. That was before Brandy passed away.
He used it to talk to girls he was seeing on the side.
What did you do with it?
Throw it away.
Why'd you throw a phone away?
So I don't need it.
When detectives asked when exactly he got rid of that phone, he was just as vague.
I don't remember. I just remember getting rid of the phone. I don't know where to find the phone. Like I said, I don't see where that has anything to do with this.
The detectives, on the other hand, believe Henry's lies about the phone tie everything together.
He never told police about that second cell phone because he knew that with that information, they'd be able to see that his location was consistent with Brandy Peters' house the night of this murder.
And I know you were over at her house on Friday. Okay?
We confronted Henry about that information, and at that point, he declined to cooperate any further in the investigation.
I don't answer no more of y'all questions. I don't like the way y'all seem like you're trying to railroad me into being someone that killed a lady and her kids, which being one of my children. I don't have anything to say. Y'all still need to question me. Can I go home now?
For now, detectives have no choice but to let Henry go.
We never felt we had the wrong person. But the evidence we had in this case was very circumstantial. You had a phone, you had a timeline.
And we know he had a motive.
So, to learn more about that motive, detectives dig into the court records.
What they uncover confirms what Letitia told them.
He was ordered to pay a lot of money in child support.
In fact, he owed Brandy even more money than Mario.
Learn more about that motive, detectives dig into the court records.
What they uncover confirms what Letitia told them.
He was ordered to pay a lot of money in child support.
In fact, he owed Brandy even more money than Mario.
Detectives investigating the murder of single mom Brandy Peters and her 3 small children have discovered that Henry Segura, the father of her youngest child, owed her a significant amount of child support.
Henry told police that he had put himself on child support.
She never filed the paperwork for it. You did it?
I did it.
But what he hadn't told them was that he'd gotten significantly behind on his payments.
He's an over-the-road welder. He can have a job 1 month and not have a job for 2 more months.
However, in talking to Henry's coworkers, the detectives learned that he had a plan to deal with his money problems.
Henry had a chance to go to Afghanistan and do military contracting as a welder and get 6 figures.
However, there was one big problem in his plan.
If you have child support payments outstanding, then you cannot leave the country.
With Brandy and their son standing between him and a potential 6-figure payoff, the detectives believe Henry had made a choice.
He felt that he'd be much better off if she was dead and maybe even the kid.
And when the detectives receive the results of the forensics testing from the crime lab, they're convinced that Henry had done the unthinkable to get rid of his child support problems.
Henry Segura's DNA is on the grab bar of the bathtub.
That puts him at the scene where the children were drowned.
Finally, in September of 2011, more than a year after the murders, the authorities place Henry under arrest for murder.
When he was arrested, we attempted to speak to him again, but he didn't want to talk.
In fact, the news that Henry had been arrested for killing both Brandy and his own son leaves nearly everyone speechless.
When it came out that he was involved. It was a shock to think that he could do something like this.
The crime was so heinous that soon after Henry's arrest, prosecutors announced that they would be seeking the death penalty.
It's one of the worst cases I've ever looked at, and if you have kids, your stomach turns. And if anybody deserved death penalty, it was going to be the subject that did this.
There was no offers and no deals.
When Henry goes on trial for murder, the prosecutors maintain that his motive was simple.
Henry Segura committed these murders because he didn't want to pay child support.
It's a need to take back control. The emotional side takes over the rational side.
And according to the prosecutors, there is no doubt that it was Henry who killed Brandy and the kids.
We know from his second cell phone that he was there that night.
And then his DNA being on the bathtub of the house.
What do you want now, Henry?
The prosecutors also argue that Henry's actions that night prove the crime was premeditated.
You have your main phone at home to create an alibi, and then took your second phone with you.
Then he'd gone over to Brandy's house.
We need to talk.
Okay. Come in.
But at some point, after he'd gotten in the door, Henry pulled his gun.
Brandy went to try to either get the phone or even get, whatever weapon she may have had. And I think he started to shoot as she was going down the hall. And then she was beat to death by the gun. But she was not gonna go down without a fight, especially for those children. She fought that fight for her kids.
Once Brandy was dead, Henry went looking for his son. But he'd made a miscalculation.
I don't think the twins were supposed to be home. I think it was just supposed to be his son and Brandy at the house. And now he realizes he has to take care of all of them.
How could you do such a thing? To have taken the life of your own flesh and blood and innocent children and the mother of your child? He's a monster.
And you kill your son in order for you not to have to pay $20,000 in child support? 20 grand, bro?
There was no conscience there. He cared more about protecting himself and protecting his lifestyle.
When it's the defense's turn, they argue that Henry is totally innocent.
The defense in this case was always Henry didn't do it. You got the wrong person.
And when the defense put Henry on the stand, he certainly did not look like a killer.
He gets his direct from his defense attorney. It comes across clean, calm, he's cool, collected, no issues.
But the defense's strategy isn't without risk.
We knew that he definitely wasn't always respectful of women. Just looking at the evidence in his cell phone, how he talked to the women he was in relationships with.
He had anger problems.
So let's see how he reacts to being questioned by a woman.
The cross-examination by Sarah Dugan allowed the jury to see the true colors of Henry.
When he felt challenged, especially by a woman, he realized and started lashing back at her.
The switch flips, and you get to see the monster that's inside him.
The jury definitely saw it.
Henry Segura was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder.
However, they stopped short of the death penalty.
Henry Segura was sentenced to life in prison.
The family can finally have closure. Justice was served. It's done. The book is closed on this one.
But no amount of prison time will ever make up for the pain Henry caused, or the lives he took.
this will always be just a sad tragedy. I could never really understand why this happened to Brandy, let alone those children.
There's no real closure for that, but you do find ways to cope. There are the memories that get you through. They were love, they came from love, and they gave love.
The first time I saw her run, I said, whoa, this girl is rolling.
She was probably the best runner in the state, and she was a hopeful for the Olympics.
Shelley had left to go to a party in Center City and never returned home.
Flyers are going up. People were knocking on doors.
He found what appeared to be the remains of a human being.
People are shocked. When a gunshot rings out on a dark spring night, it sets in motion a chain of events that cannot be undone.
Honestly, at first, hearing the news of what actually happened, I felt like it was a lie. It just came out of the blue. It was just a shock.
An unfathomable crime that will test a family, investigators, and the bonds of love.
Every time she mentioned his name, she would smile. There was no doubt in my mind. Their relationship was going good, and that she was happy.
In my 15-year career, the most difficult crime I ever responded to.
But as police push for answers, they'll walk into a world they could never imagine, laced with jealousy, shifting allegiances, and stone-cold liars.
It opens your eyes to just how brutal people can be.
April 29th, 2013. It's just after midnight in Hartford, Connecticut, when police receive a 911 call from a section of town they know all too well.
Yes, I'm real pretty sure. Where? It's on the corner of Magnolia and Martha.
It's called the Clay R Saloon. It's the northeast section of the city of Hartford, Connecticut. It's a very tough neighborhood to live in.
The caller, who identifies himself as 21-year-old CJ Bryan, is desperate for help.
Please, Somali.
He stated his girlfriend had been shot and to send help right away. Very dramatic.
We're gonna be there, okay? But you gotta get help. You good? You can breathe? Somali. Could you go quick? Breathe.
When first responders arrive at the scene, they find CJ's girlfriend, 20-year-old Shamari Jenkins, slumped behind the wheel of her vehicle.
Shamari's car had crashed on the west side of Magnolia Street. She was still in the driver's seat, unconscious. She had been shot one time through the shoulder and that entered her upper torso.
Please tell me she's gonna be all right.
We're gonna do everything we can.
As EMTs tend to Shamari, CJ tells responding officers what he knows, which isn't much.
I don't know. Everything happened so fast. I didn't even realize what was going on.
They were driving down the street and all of a sudden it was just gunshots and one bullet came through Shamari's back window. She lost control of the car and it just hit the stairway.
With CJ by her side, Shamari is rushed to the hospital, barely clinging to life.
She was immediately rushed into surgery when she got to the hospital.
In a neighborhood known for gang violence and drug wars, detectives are all too familiar with such tragedies.
Hey, what happened there? 20-year-old African-American female shot through the back window, had a crash right here.
He was just sitting at a light, and a bullet come through the car. It hit you for no reason at all.
Had Shamari been an innocent victim of crossfire? The crime scene certainly seems to support that theory.
Shamari's vehicle had an obvious gunshot hole through the rear window, and we could actually see clearly that it went into the driver's seat and ultimately struck her.
But a closer look inside the car reveals a clue that deepens the mystery.
Really, take a look at this. Looking in there, I could actually see it. She had a photo of my ultrasound.
For detectives, Shamari's apparent pregnancy means she isn't the only victim whose survival is on the line.
In my 15-year career, probably the most difficult crime I ever responded to.
The second of 6 siblings, Shamari Jenkins was born in 1993 into a large and loving family.
Yeah, I call her Ladybug. That was my nickname for her, Ladybug.
She was just beautiful. She was a beautiful child.
A beauty that shined both inside and out. After graduating high school in 2010, the statuesque teen followed her heart to nursing school.
She graduated and she wanted to finish college and then go into nursing because she loved people and she wanted to take care of people.
But almost as quickly as Shamari's dream took hold, a life-changing event in 2012 forced her to reassess her priorities.
Shamari's mom had gotten really sick.
Shamari was actually going to school in North Carolina, but she came back and she was taking care of her mom.
She said she would rather be there for her mother. You know, her mother needed her at that point, and that's what she wanted to do.
Shamari's mother eventually lost her battle with the autoimmune disease, sarcoidosis, and passed away that August.
For Shamari, it was really hard. She was really close to her mom, and with her not being there was just like a void.
Despite the emotional toll her mother's death took on her, Shamari stood strong and remained the rock her family had grown to depend on.
Good morning.
She started taking on mother role. She took custody and I moved in with her and she was just doing everything that my mother would do.
Have a good day. Hold on, don't forget your lunch.
It was natural for her. It was hard, but she did it.
As a result, the 19-year-old grew wise beyond her years.
I think those incidents caused her to mature, you know, a little faster than she would have.
I feel like she was trying to find herself and she was trying to find love.
Hey, baby, what's up?
Hey, how are you?
In the fall of 2012, it seemed Shamari might get that wish. While hanging out with friends, she was introduced to a young man named Carlton Bryant.
I'm Carlton.
Nice to meet you.
My friends call me CJ, though. They call me CJ.
Like Shamari, CJ had also faced his own challenges in life.
CJ was a single father. He had a 3-year-old son, and he was able to support him through a well-paying job at a local security company.
Where you guys headed?
Well, I'm actually headed to go pick up my son.
You have a son?
Yeah.
How cute is that?
She knew that he had a son with someone else. It wasn't a secret. She accepted that.
Not only did Shamari accept everything about CJ, before long, she was madly in love.
Every time she talked about him, all Shamari would do was smile. I don't think that she's ever had anyone that she felt like she loved as much as she loved CJ.
And naturally, Shamari's close-knit family welcomed her new boyfriend with open arms.
They were both in love with each other. There was no doubt in my mind. Their relationship was going good and that she was happy.
CJ would be over my house pretty much every day, if not every other day. I treated him like one of my sons.
The budding romance seemed to be on a fast track to happily ever after, especially when in December of 2012, Shamari and CJ found out they were expecting a baby of their own.
She always wanted a family. She was excited about it.
There was one woman in the couple's life, though, that wasn't happy about the baby. CJ's ex, Ashley Poole.
Shamari and CJ never had any issues until his first child's mother found out their relationship was more serious than what she thought it was. She used to text Shamari or call her and, just harass her.
But CJ assured Shamari she had nothing to worry about.
CJ told Shamari, she was just a crazy baby mama that wanna be calling his girlfriend.
Eventually, the drama subsided. By the following April, the couple knew they were having a boy. Only 8 months after her mother's death, Shamari's life seemed to be back on track.
Knowing her to be this nurturing, loving person, I knew that she would be a very good mother.
When you look at Shamari and CJ in public together, you'll see a happy couple.
loving couple, April 29th, 2013 was supposed to be a day of celebration. That afternoon, CJ attended a cookout at Shamari's house.
Shamari came to me. She was like, Daddy, I'm going to see at CJ's house to spend the night. I'll see you tomorrow morning. I said, okay, baby, and I love you. And she said, I'll call you later. And she left out the door.
But just after midnight, Todd Jenkins receives a call no father ever wants to hear.
No, that's when I got a call from CJ. Saying somebody been shot, somebody been shot. And I just dropped the phone.
While the first ripples of this tragedy are only now being felt, investigators across town are already hard at work. And what they don't know yet is they're about to wade into even darker waters.
People are crying, hugging each other, screaming Shamari's name, saying she didn't deserve this.
In the early morning hours of April 29th, 2013, Shamari Jenkins' loved ones woke to the horrifying news that the 20-year-old mother-to-be had been previously wounded in a late-night shooting.
Shamari's boyfriend, CJ Bryant, was apparently sitting beside her when a bullet came through the back passenger window and struck her. On the way to the hospital, I'm actually trying to think positive. I'm like, okay, she got shot, but she's gonna be okay.
As Shamari's panicked family anxiously awaits an update from doctors, back at the crime scene, investigators are searching for answers.
The bullet was fired through the rear windshield or the rear window of the car on the passenger side.
While Shamari's vehicle is processed for evidence, detectives begin canvassing the neighborhood for possible eyewitnesses.
We're knocking on doors, seeing if anybody heard anything, anybody saw anything.
But locating a witness, especially in a rough and tumble section of town like Clay Arsenal, isn't easy.
I would absolutely classify it as a high crime area. You know, from shootings and assaults and drug activity, stolen vehicles, property damage, you pretty much name it, it occurs in that neighborhood.
Oftentimes, there's a suspicion of police in neighborhoods like this.
No one claims to have heard any shots fired that night. And that's not all.
We weren't able to locate any shell casings. We did a pretty extensive canvass, for that.
No witnesses, no physical evidence. To investigators, something certainly seems amiss.
I'm looking for physical evidence, shell casings, firearms. I'm checking the area and the car. And the feeling that I had, it was just unusual.
As investigators ponder their next move, Shamari's family is gathered at St. Francis Hospital, awaiting news of Shamari's condition.
If you'll wait right here, the surgeon will be right with you.
I know once they won't tell me anything, and they take you off and sit you in that little side room. So I know that side room, there's nothing good about that side room.
Just before 2 a.m., Todd Jenkins and his family received the gut-wrenching news.
I'm sorry. We did everything we could do, and sorry to tell you she didn't make it.
He said she's gone. She's gone. And I don't even remember what happened directly. Right after that, I was floored.
Sadly, when Shamari died, her unborn fetus did not survive, so it was a double tragedy.
Shortly after receiving word of Shamari's death, Hartford detectives Reginald Early and Michael Rykowski begin questioning family members at the ER.
We try to explain what we have at that point, try to garner any background information on what may have been going on in the victim's life, which could lead to the potential motive.
She had any enemies that you were aware of, or nobody?
They didn't have any enemies. Everybody liked her.
Detectives find that everyone is in shock.
All anybody could do was cry and just ask, why did it happen to her?
She didn't appear to have any known enemies. We were unable to find any real motive.
We'll find the person who done this.
But there is one person detectives would still like to question. The only known witness to the crime, Shamari's boyfriend, CJ.
Very sorry for your loss. Can you tell us what happened?
CJ reiterates what he told responders at the scene.
Everything happened so fast, I didn't really know what's going on. I see a guy come up behind the car with a gun.
Baby, go, punch it, go! The car was already running, so he told Shamari to speed off. And as she went to speed off, the alleged perpetrator fired one shot into the back windshield. And that bullet ultimately struck Shamari, causing her to crash into the west side of Magnolia Street.
CJ's behavior, coupled with evidence at the crime scene, seems to bolster his claim that maybe he and Shamari were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He certainly didn't come off as though he had just committed a murder.
There's no way a passenger inside the car could have fired the shot.
Still, detectives press CJ for any more information he can provide.
What were y'all doing driving around so late? Especially in that part of town. We were waiting for my cousin.
He said Shamari and him were sitting in the car. He was waiting for his cousin who had owed him money.
Who's your cousin? Matthew Hall Davis.
The name provides a potential new lead in the case, along with a new witness.
Appreciate your time.
As detectives conclude their interview with CJ, they know unraveling this mystery will be a daunting task. But there's about to be a break no one sees coming.
I got so excited because I'm like, I'm about to solve this case. I'm gonna solve this case.
On April 29th, 2013, 20-year-old Shamari Jenkins was gunned down on the streets of Hartford, Connecticut, leaving her boyfriend CJ Bryan along with the rest of her family in a state of shock.
I never got a chance to tell my baby goodbye and that I love you. And I still cry. I cry myself to sleep every night, thinking about it.
The next day, Shamari's autopsy confirms her cause of death.
She had one gunshot wound which ended up into her chest.
We were able to recover a projectile from her upper torso.
It's the only projectile recovered in the case so far, and it provides an important piece of information.
We knew that we were looking for a large caliber revolver.
But since there's no trace of the murder weapon, detectives are forced to focus on their only other lead, a potential witness named by CJ Bryan, his cousin Matthew.
CJ got mentioned Matthew Hall Davis as potentially having some information.
Fortunately, finding Matthew comes easy.
I got a phone call from the front desk saying that there was someone in the lobby who wanted to speak to me in regards to the murder. So I walked downstairs, and there's a gentleman who introduces himself to me as Matthew Allen Hall Davis. Please have a seat.
Detectives waste no time in sitting Matthew down for an interview.
Thanks for coming in, Mr. Hall Davis.
And when they do, he seems genuinely distraught. Turns out he and Shamari had been very close.
He said Shamari was a good friend of his. He also said he had a girlfriend named Devin who was good friends with Shamari. And he said Shamari, him, CJ, and Devin would often spend a lot of time together at their apartment on Greenfield Street. Devin worked in an ice cream store, and as she would get out of work and always bring ice cream home, they would eat ice cream, watch movies together.
In fact, Matthew explains, he and CJ had just been with Shamari and her family the evening of her murder.
Matthew said that he had hung out with Shamari and CJ earlier in the day at a barbecue at her father's house in East Hartford. That they were all back there cooking hamburgers, having fun together, hanging out.
And that was actually the last time I really saw her alive. You sure about that?
Yes, sir.
Matthew's story immediately raises a red flag. If what he says is true, it doesn't gel with CJ's earlier version of events.
So you weren't in the Clay Arsenal the other night?
No, sir. So was CJ lying to us?
He had a feeling CJ knew who did it, and he can get that information and relay it to me.
But before Matthew gets that opportunity, detectives once again receive a call. This time from CJ's stepfather.
Moment, please. I'll be right back. CJ's stepfather is a Hartford police officer, retired. I was good friends with him. He explained to me that he was going to bring CJ in to tell me the truth, that him and CJ had a talk.
Once at the station, CJ admits he had not been truthful in his first interview.
I lied to you guys about why we'd really been to Clay Arsenal.
Okay, what really happened?
I had Shamari bring me over there to
That's when it all went down. He told me he was trying to buy some marijuana. The person went behind the building to retrieve the marijuana. And when he came back, he had a gun.
I see the gun. I told Shamari to hit it. And as he was trying to get away, he fired the gun. Okay, who fired the gun?
And that's when he revealed the identity of the suspect.
His name is Lo.
Detectives are already familiar with the name.
It was a person named Kavan. His street name was Lo.
Kavan was in fact the suspect in another shooting in the area.
Okay, so you're telling me that Lo is the one who killed Shamari Jenkins?
Yes.
He went as far as picking Lo out in a photograph lineup.
Right away, I alert my counterparts. Give me all the information you can on Kavan. Find out where he is. We need him now. Because now, not only is he responsible for a shooting on Bedford Street 2 weeks earlier, it's possibly he's responsible for killing Shamari Jenkins.
Less than 48 hours later, Kavan is apprehended by police.
We brought him in, read him his rights, interviewed him.
Look, I don't even know where I got me in here. I didn't do nothing. We have an eyewitness who said you have something to do with 2 different shootings.
He ultimately admitted to his involvement in the other shooting on Bedford Street, which is a couple of blocks away from where Shamari got killed.
It's an admission that gives credibility to CJ's story. Could a small-time drug deal have led to Shamari's murder? It would seem to explain what CJ and Shamari were doing in Clay Arsenal that night.
I get very excited. I got so excited because I'm like, I'm about to solve this case. I'm gonna solve this case.
But then, Kavan turns the table on detectives.
I don't know nothing about no Shamari Jenkins. I would never shoot no female.
He was adamant. I had nothing to do with shooting that female. I would never shoot a girl.
But detectives aren't about to take the word of an admitted criminal.
Murder on the night of April 29th.
I was at home. Do you have anyone that can vouch for that?
Kavan stated at the time of the incident he was on the phone with his girlfriend, whom he identified for us.
Please have a seat.
Okay. Detectives follow up with Kavan's girlfriend, Christine.
His girlfriend did in fact come in and give us a statement confirming what he had said.
She said she was home.
CJ's harrowing 911 call.
We were able to confirm cell phone records, his cell phone and her cell phone, and he was in that area where he said he was, and not in the area where Shamari was shot at the time.
Which means Shamari's murder investigation is once again at a frustrating standstill. That is until detectives receive a call from another witness, one who will crack this troubling case wide open.
He had information related to the Shamari Jenkins homicide.
Nearly 2 weeks after Shamari Jenkins was gunned down inside her car in Hartford, Connecticut, the 20-year-old mother-to-be is finally laid to rest.
It was a home celebration for my baby girl. She'd have loved it to see all her family and friends there celebrating her life.
It was too much for me. It was too much for me, and I was still going through the loss of my mother. So when that happened, I just didn't want to be here no more.
Adding to the tragedy, CJ Bryan is left mourning the loss of his girlfriend and their unborn son.
He came up to me, hugging me, crying, saying he's sorry. He'll get whoever did it. He's just really sorry. If she was at home, it would have never happened.
After Shamari's funeral, the grief proves unbearable for CJ. So much so, he decides to move out of state.
He wants to change his life. He wants to go to church. He's gonna go try living in Florida with his biological father.
Still, CJ promises to continue helping the investigation as needed.
He still stays in contact with me through phone calls. And I said, look, CJ, I'm gonna need you periodically throughout this investigation.
It's an oath that would soon be put to the test. As weeks pass with no new leads, Shamari's murder investigation begins to grind to a standstill in the spring of 2013.
There was nothing that anyone could do. That's a lot of frustration.
Then, in May of that same year,
several robberies that occurred in surrounding towns.
These robberies, no one was being shot, but two guys were running into the jewelry stores with a gun, stealing jewelry and running out and jumping into a car.
Luckily, in one such robbery in Manchester, Connecticut, the two perps are caught on tape.
There's surveillance video of that robbery, which shows them holding a gun, pointing it at the clerk in the store.
Manchester police turn to the media for help, and soon the effort pays off in a way no one expects.
Yes, Early. As a result of that media coverage of it, Carlton Bryan actually contacted Sergeant Early.
He called me one evening and says, Detective Early, I can help you solve the jewelry store robberies that are happening up in that area. I know exactly who's doing it. And I'm like, wow. I said, how would you know that? He like, just trust me, I know who's doing it.
And that's when he stated that it was Matthew Allen Hall Davis and Kingsley Minto.
Matthew Hall Davis, CJ's cousin, had been an early witness in Shamari Jenkins' murder. But now it seems he'd gotten in with the wrong crowd.
I met with the Manchester Police and West Hartford Police. They had a little task force, and we exchanged information, compared notes, looked at videos, looked at the pictures that we had from the names provided by CJ. Perfect match. Matthew Allen Hall Davis and Kingsley Minto were arrested on charges of robbing a jewelry store at gunpoint.
But once in an interview room at the Manchester police station, Kingsley Minto throws police for a loop.
He's admitted to the robbery, but he wants to be shown some leniency.
What makes you think we can do that for you?
First off, I have information about another case. I'm listening. I know who killed Shamari Jenkins.
Hold that thought.
That's when my phone rings, and I get that call to come talk to him. And that's when everything opened up.
I understand you got some information for us about the murder of Shamari Jenkins. Yeah.
He tells me that he's involved with doing robberies, but he's not a killer. He tells me that he did the robberies with Matthew Allen Hall Davis.
The day after Shamari's funeral, Matthew confessed to me that he killed him.
Kingsley says, I told Matthew, I don't want to hear no more. Don't tell me no more. Because I was just in disbelief. You went to her funeral. You guys knew this girl.
You know what? He used a revolver. I know exactly where it's at. I can show you guys.
Kingsley agrees to lead police to the gun. It's hidden in a park in Vernon, Connecticut.
He said he can show us where he drove Matthew to, where Matthew got out of the car, walked into some woods, and came back out. And he took us right to that area, and within 10 minutes, the firearm was located, wrapped up in a bag.
The firearm was in fact a large caliber. It was a 44 caliber Ruger Blackhawk revolver. That firearm was then transferred from the Manchester Police Department to State Connecticut Laboratory, where they in fact confirmed that it was the firearm used to murder Shamari.
After weeks of heartbreaking dead ends, it appears detectives are finally closing in on Shamari's murderer.
I'm ecstatic. I got him. That's all I'm saying all night long. I got him. I got him. Now is the most important part of the investigation. I have to take my time. I can't let my excitement overwhelm me. I can't miss any steps.
But were investigators really as close as they believe? Or was there another side to this story still waiting to be told?
He said it was an accident and the bullet was meant for someone else.
Of 24-year-old Matthew Hall Davis and his friend, 29-year-old Kingsley Minto, for a spate of armed robberies in Connecticut, has led police to an unexpected discovery.
The information we got from Kingsley Minto was absolutely on point. He led us directly to the firearm, which we believed at that point was actually the firearm used to kill Shamari. He had also implicated Matthew Allen Hall Davis.
For a case that seemed at a dead end, it's a much welcome turn of events, and it was all made possible by Shamari's boyfriend and Matthew's cousin, CJ Bryan.
CJ served him to me on a silver platter, on his own.
Now all investigators need is Matthew's confession and a motive.
Following our interview with Kingsley Minto, we immediately went to interview Matthew while he was in the custody of Hartford Correctional Center.
But once in an interview room, Matthew denies shooting Shamari.
We need to know what happened to Shamari Jenkins.
I told you guys everything I know. I told told you what happened.
After several hours of Matthew, denying and refusing to implicate himself, we started speaking about just general forgiveness and how, in the court's eyes, we feel if a person is honest about their mistake and they're remorseful for what they have done, it tends to look better for the suspect.
Finally, Matthew cracked.
He had a dramatic change, and he appeared to become more truthful. At one point, he simply said, "Let me call my girlfriend, and I'll tell you exactly what happened."
In front of police, Matthew calls his girlfriend, Devin.
He called her and put it in speaker mode so they could hear what everybody was saying.
Hello? Hey, baby, how you doing?
Besides him telling her how much he loved her, he warned her that I'm about to tell you something, but I don't want you to look at me any differently.
I shot Shamari. I'm the one who killed her.
She had become close friends with Shamari. She had gone to Shamari's funeral with Matthew. She just couldn't fathom that he was in fact responsible for it.
And then he was just begging her for forgiveness.
Are you serious?
Baby, no, it's not what you think.
I don't have anything else to say to you. Don't ever talk to me again.
And she hung up the phone, and he had the impression that she was done with him. He just started banging his head on the wall, smashing his head on the wall. So at one point, I dove across the table and grabbed him.
Eventually, Matthew regains his composure, so detectives press him further.
Just tell us what happened. We need to know.
That's when Matthew drops another bombshell.
He says, I'm the shooter. Mr. CJ is the one who orchestrated this. He was the mastermind behind it.
During Matthew's confession of the incident, he confirmed that CJ in fact wanted Shamari killed because Shamari refused to have that abortion.
Matthew goes on to spell out exactly what happened that night, starting with the cookout at Shamari's house.
At some point, CJ tells him, she has to go, gives him the gun.
After the party, Matthew says the three friends split up. Shamari drove CJ to his house, while Matthew left in CJ's car. On the way home, CJ asked his girlfriend to stop to meet someone in Clay Arsenal.
They pulled up on the side of the road, so I kept circling around the block. until I saw him.
He was able to park his car a block away on Enfield Street and walk through what they call a cut, a throughway over to the next street.
CJ told him to hide in a cut, and he was supposed to just run out and empty the whole clip on Shamari through her driver's window. But Matthew said he said that he decided to run around another way and come behind the car to shoot CJ.
Why'd you want to kill CJ? For putting me in this position. Because I thought if CJ was gone, I wanted my problems to be gone.
He indicated to us that the shooting of Shamari was accidental. He didn't want to shoot Shamari, and that he had become upset with CJ that CJ had put him in that position.
So you were trying to kill CJ?
Or Shamari did.
So when I shot the bullet, ricocheted and hit her.
But to investigators, Matthew's story sounds like a work of revisionist history.
My personal belief is that he thought if he had portrayed it as an accident, he would be viewed better by the court.
When you're telling me you intend to kill someone and someone else other than that person dies, the intent is transferred according to the law. Either way, it's murder.
But if CJ was involved in this conspiracy, as Matthew now so desperately asserts, why had CJ ratted him out? Detectives believe they know the answer.
Once he had seen the surveillance video of Matthew in possession of that firearm, CJ became really angry because Matthew was supposed to destroy the firearm after the homicide. And by Matthew committing armed robberies with the firearm, CJ believed that it was going to lead back to him that he was involved in the homicide.
So CJ essentially figured one or two things. I gotta get these guys off the street before police catch them with this gun. Or if police do link this gun to Shamari's death, they'll think these two guys did it and they won't give me up.
CJ obviously thought that he had it figured out. Unfortunately, by him contacting us and leading us directly to Kingsley Minto and Matthew and Davis, it did exactly opposite of what he thought it was going to do, because it ultimately led us right back to him.
With Matthew's statement, police are one step closer to closing this case.
He said, I'm not going down alone, he's going down with me.
But will the word of a confessed killer really be enough? And had CJ really been the lone mastermind? What investigators are about to learn next will thrust a new player into this deadly game of hearts.
I really thought that Shamari Jenkins was his girlfriend, his main girl. But he had another girlfriend. Matthew Allen Hall Davis, of course, his claim was that he ultimately tried to kill Carlton and accidentally killed Shamari in the process, which, you know, you can believe or not believe. And you can think about it. If you killed somebody you didn't intend to kill, would you want anything to do with guns after that? And yet 12 days later, he's pointing the same gun at a different person in another crime. That sort of weighs on the other side of the coin in terms of making one a little bit skeptical about his claims.
On June 6, 2013, 24-year-old Matthew Hall Davis confessed to Hartford police that he fired the lone bullet that killed mother-to-be Shamari Jenkins. But according to Matthew, his cousin and Shamari's boyfriend, C.J. Bryan, put him up to it.
There was never any allegation that Matthew Allen Hall Davis got anything in return for committing the shooting. It was simply that he was under some sort of influence from his friend. I believe that CJ manipulated him. I believe that he felt a strange kind of love for CJ, and he would do anything for him.
But in order to put CJ behind bars for good, prosecutors will need more than Matthew's word. That's when a man named Everett Wallace comes forward as a result of neighborhood canvassing.
He actually lived in front of the building where Shamari and CJ parked.
In an interview room, Wallace finally reveals the conniving depths of this conspiracy.
He noted to investigators that CJ had actually spoken to him in the hours before the shooting.
He asked me to be a witness for him.
His job was to be there and be a witness for the police, confirming that someone shot and ran away from the car.
He told me he was going to shoot her, but I didn't believe him. You know, people say that all the time. Doesn't mean they're going to do it.
He just didn't believe that someone could be that grandfather who owned the security company he worked for.
Based on witness statements and the recovery of the murder weapon, police believe they have more than enough evidence to arrest CJ. Now they just have to find him.
After the warrants get approved and signed by the judge, I'm calling CJ on the phone. I'm thinking he's in Florida, because that's what he's telling me. But we have a technology where we can ping a cell phone, so we use that technology to determine his exact location. And it wasn't in Florida where he told me he was. It was actually in Windsor, Connecticut.
And not just anywhere in Connecticut.
Global positioning technology showed his phone pinging at his girlfriend Ashley's house.
Now I'm really excited. We all get together. We go to the area of the house. We surround the house. At that point, TJ came out, nice as pie. He put his hands behind his back, looked at me in my face, said, "I'm sorry."
When Shamari's family hears the news, CJ's actions seem like the ultimate betrayal.
Honestly, at first, hearing the news of what actually happened, I felt like it was a lie at first. I just could not believe that someone could do something like that.
For you to come to our family just really just set fire for me. And after that, I just opened my eyes to everything.
All CJ had to do was just walk away, just leave her alone. If you didn't want to be bothered with the baby, all you had to do was just walk away. She would have been fine with her baby.
On May 1st, 2015, CJ's cousin, Matthew Hall Davis, is convicted and sentenced to 70 years in prison for Shamari's death. 3 months later, CJ receives a similar fate.
CJ, the mastermind, the orchestrator, got 80 years.
When the jury came back and read their verdict,
I just jumped for joy, because now everything is over. Shamari has her justice, and now our family can just go on in peace.
I thought it would make me feel better, but it did. It did make me feel better. I mean, yeah, justice was served, but it doesn't make my heart feel any less pain. You know, for Shamari, she didn't deserve that.
While justice is bittersweet, Shamari's family will always wonder what might have been if this young, beautiful woman hadn't followed her heart into the wrong arms.
He made Shamari believe that he loved her, He made Shamari believe that she was his only one and that they were going to be in a relationship and raise their son. But he showed otherwise. He never did love Shamari. If he loved Shamari, he would have never had this done to her.
You think you know people, but you really have no idea who you trust and let into your life.
A family man, an Air Force officer, vanishes into thin air.
We were supposed to have a get-together. His family had a cookout scheduled, and he responded that he would be there and never showed up.
A police investigation leads to ghastly discoveries.
He said that him and his uncle had even laughed. I wonder whose grave we're digging.
He said that he was going to first put some dirt around it because he said he was good at that kind of stuff.
And a criminal trial exposes a mastermind whose evil strains the limits of belief.
A Hollywood screenwriter couldn't make something like this up.
This is a creative criminal, somebody who will stop at nothing to get what they want.
No sense of right or wrong whatsoever. I have never seen a case like this.
Quite possibly the most dangerous, egotistical, diabolical person I've ever dealt with. It was astonishing.
October 12, 2007. It's an ordinary afternoon at police headquarters in the Dallas suburb of Garland, Texas. But this routine day is soon disrupted by the arrival of 2 agents from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
Hi, can I help you?
Yeah, we had a check on a property. They were investigating a default on a veteran's loan.
Sergeant Dawes, can you help them?
Yeah, sure. And some suspicious circumstances caused them to come to the police department and have us get involved with them.
The homeowner in question is Michael Giles, a retired and decorated NCO for the United States Air Force.
Michael is very disciplined. He was never late on anything. Everything was always up to par and paid.
Michael Giles never missed a VA payment in his life on his home. It's his sister. I hope this helps.
Thank you. When authorities track down Michael's sister Gwen, they're in for a surprise.
Thanks, Miss Haney, for your accommodations.
Oh, sure. No problem.
They asked me the last time I had any contact with my brother, and I told them that the last time I actually saw him was the end of June in 2006.
So you haven't seen your brother for more than a year?
No. Now, we've texted and emailed, but I haven't actually seen him.
Has Michael Giles met some sinister fate? Or is there a more reasonable explanation for his limited communication?
Michael Giles was a very private man. He was always to himself.
In order to resolve this anomaly in an orderly man's life, Texas law enforcement must confront a sordid case of false identity, brazen lawlessness, and cold-hearted betrayal.
It was amazing what this person could do. It was like a puppet master, just pulling all the strings.
Michael Giles was born in 1959 and spent his childhood in Monroe, Louisiana, where he and his 5 siblings made the most of country living.
We actually grew up on my grandmother's farm, gardening and just playing.
We're a fun-loving family. We're a tight-knit family.
When Michael's parents divorced in 1968, the family left behind the rural haven of Louisiana for something more cosmopolitan.
We moved to Dallas because my mom had already relocated here, and then she came back and got us once she got settled here, and she remarried at that time.
Michael had little difficulty adjusting to his new, more fast-paced surroundings.
He was always smiling, joking, having fun.
And as he grew into a young man, that happy-go-lucky outlook developed into one of conviction and duty.
Michael attended Carter High School, and Mike graduated in 1977. All he wanted to ever do was go to the military. And as soon as he graduated from high school, a year later he went into the Air Force.
Michael seemed to do very well in the military. He received many honors.
He did get lots of medals and was honored quite a bit.
While stationed in England in the mid-1990s, Michael's focused discipline was no match for the charms of an attractive young woman on the base named Quinetta Harris.
Let me introduce you to Michael, good friend of mine.
Very, very nice to meet you, Sam.
You too. Michael met Quinetta when he was in the military stationed in England, and at that time she was married to another serviceman.
Quinetta's a nurse, well-traveled. She was well-spoken.
All right, Mike, we gotta go. You ready to go, baby? Yeah. All right, bro. So take care, see you.
Michael was too respectful to make an advance on a married woman. But fate soon did the heart's bidding.
Hey, how are you? How's your day?
Good, how you been?
You look really nice.
Oh, really? Thank you.
Thanks for joining me.
Quinetta and her husband had some marital problems and split up. During that time, Michael and Quinetta formed a relationship.
What can I get you today?
I'll take what you're having.
Sure.
After her and the other guy divorced, Mike went to her ex-husband and asked him if he minded if he dated Quinetta. And he gave him his blessings.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Michael and Quinetta appeared to be an item. They continued their relationship overseas.
But soon, the itinerant nature of military life wrought havoc on the romance. And in 1998, Michael retired from the Air Force and returned to Dallas.
He made his way back to Texas, started planting some roots down in Garland, Texas, started working for Southwestern Bell.
But once back home, Michael found Quinetta hard to forget.
There was allegedly an on-again, off-again relationship between those two. They would meet up every so often.
She was living in Detroit. He was living here in Texas. But she would visit him.
While smoldering passion burned, the fire eventually fizzled out again, and Michael resolved to lead a comfortable life in the quiet of military retirement.
Michael Giles' discipline when it came to his lifestyle was very meticulous. He saved every dime. He made the right decisions.
But as the years wore on, Michael's family wondered if all the trappings of his success weren't meant to be shared with a special someone.
Michael's home was 3 bedrooms, 2 living areas, formal dining room, and a office.
He had a life that I would be proud to emulate. Buying his house, getting his life in order, and then he'll be able to share that with someone special.
When Michael attended a family event in 2006, the arrival of a surprise guest made them wonder if he hadn't already found that special someone after all.
Hey, everybody, this is Pamela.
Michael and Pamela first met during his military days when he had been stationed in New Mexico. They had since reconnected and struck up a relationship.
He introduced her to the aunts and the uncles and nieces and nephews and all that. We really thought that it was a serious relationship.
These first buds of love had to survive the harsh realities of living hundreds of miles apart.
She was a nurse back in New Mexico.
But distance did little to dampen their devotion to each other.
He continued working, but was also spending a lot of time with Pamela. They were seeing each other a lot, especially since they didn't live in the same city.
For Michael to introduce Pamela to our family and have her come and visit him as often as she did, we really thought that they would end up getting married.
But his family now wonders, with fear mounting by the day, if Michael had simply decided to walk away from his picture-perfect life, or if the answer to his disappearance is something more sinister.
It was the money trail that started bringing everything to light, and when the mortgage wasn't being paid, set off all kinds of red flags.
It is autumn 2007 in Garland, Texas, and agents of the Veterans Administration have contacted police after one of their own, Michael Giles, has mysteriously defaulted on a house loan.
Michael had a pretty substantial amount of money saved and was very faithful in making all of his payments on time. And then just abruptly in 2006, they stopped receiving any payments from him.
Interviews with Michael's loved ones confirm for authorities the possibility of something amiss.
The last communication that I had with him was on June 30th.
But the family also indicates that lengthy periods of time without contact was not unusual.
Michael was a private person. Michael sometimes went a few weeks without talking to his family and friends.
He kind of kept to himself if something was bothering him. It's that military thing where I can handle my own.
family accustomed to Michael's habits couldn't deny something strange about their last turkey.
Eventually, she decided to move on with her life.
In October of 2007, with suspicious elements mounting, agents make the recommendation that Michael's family had been fearing.
They informed me that I needed to file a missing person report, which was very concerning to me. Something must be wrong.
With Michael's disappearance now officially a police matter, investigators, led by Garland detective Gary Sweet, expand their search. And what they find quickly takes them into unknown territory.
When we checked his financial records, we found that all the money that was coming out of his accounts was coming out in the Detroit, Michigan area.
It's a development that shifts attention away from Michael's former flame, Pamela, in New Mexico.
She was eliminated as a suspect. There was nothing there to lead us to Pamela.
But the flurry of financial activity in Detroit gives Detective Sweet his first concrete lead.
Hello? Yes, Gwen, Detective Sweet. Would there be any reason why Michael is sending money to Detroit or a co-applicant by the name of Quinetta Harris?
When investigators make a trip to Detroit, they'll uncover a shocking secret that suggests Michael may very well still be alive.
His friends never knew. His family never knew. Everyone was baffled.
Hours after Michael Giles is listed as missing, detectives have discovered a promising new lead in his personal records, a lead steering them towards Detroit and away from their initial suspect, Michael's former girlfriend, Pamela Stone.
We checked his records, and Quinetta Harris in Detroit, Michigan was on his bank accounts. Quinetta worked as a nurse's aide at a nursing home.
Authorities are surprised to discover that Michael's family had never heard of such a significant figure in his life.
He never mentioned her. He never said one thing about her.
Okay, thank you.
Is it possible Michael Giles had simply left his previous life behind in Garland and started anew?
We had to look at everything. I mean, could he have moved to Detroit and be living with Quinetta? Absolutely.
I'm gonna have to go to Detroit, find out where this money's going.
Detective Sweet flies to Detroit to make contact with Quinetta at her home on the east side of town.
Hi. Are you Quinetta Harris?
Yes, I am.
I introduced myself to her. I'm an investigator from Garland, Texas, and I'm investigating a missing person. Told her it was Michael Giles, and she said, yes, I know Michael.
Michael and Quinetta met when Mike was in the Air Force. She was married to a subordinate of his. After she had divorced her husband, Mr. Giles had pursued her. They had a relationship.
At some point after he moved back from England, Michael and Quinetta had broken up. She had gone back to Michigan, and Michael pursued other love interests.
When Detective Sweet inquires about Michael's financial records, Quinetta drops a bombshell.
Is there any reason why he's supporting you financially?
Yes, we have a child together.
She said that they had a daughter together and that Michael had put her on these accounts as child support.
Michael's family had never mentioned him having a child.
And where is that child?
Oh, she's at school, but she does live with me.
So you haven't had any contact with him, is that correct?
No, he really just helps out financially to provide for a child.
Quinetta said that Michael had worked it out with the bank in Michigan so that it would be easier for her to access the funds for their child.
It seems a reasonable explanation, but detectives will still need to confirm Quinetta's story. With suspicion swirling, detectives head 90 miles west of Detroit to a bank that handles some of Michael's accounts. There, they sit down with a financial advisor named Donald Eberly.
Hey, I've got to go.
Hi, Detective Sweet.
Donald Eberly?
You happen to handle Michael Giles' finances?
I advise him on his finances, yes.
Have you ever heard of a lady by the name of Quinetta Harris?
Yes, Miss Harris came in here wanting power of attorney over his estate. Quinetta Harris contacts Donald Eberly in East Lansing, Michigan, and presents this power of attorney that is signed by Michael Giles.
Michael Giles needed to appear in front of people and actually sign documents that could be witnessed and notarized.
And I explained to her that she needed to have him present in order to make the transfer.
Quinetta responds that Michael is ill. He was involved in a car crash and subsequently had a stroke.
She explains to him that he's basically bedridden. So Donald says, well, then I can go to your home and he can do it there. So she agrees to this. So I actually met with him right at the bedside and I got the paperwork done.
What date was that?
I believe that was September 29th, 2006.
And you saw him that day?
Yeah, of course. He had trouble talking, but he was able to get the necessary paperwork done.
Michael Giles basically signed over financial and personal history to Quinetta.
The financial advisor's story basically matched up to what Quinetta told police. And it also suggested that Michael was alive about 3 months after his family last saw him.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, officer.
Detectives returned to Dallas, satisfied that Quinetta's circumstance necessitates shared finances. At the same time, they still wonder why Michael stopped payment on his property if he was alive for all that time.
What often happens with something traumatic, like an accident or a sickness, is that people fall out of their normal routine. They might even fall behind on their bills. Certainly this could have happened with Michael.
As they begin poring over reports of police activity in Michael's neighborhood, detectives stumble upon another new lead. A 911 call that came from Michael's neighbor on the evening of July 5th, 2006, soon after Michael was last seen by his family.
The next door neighbor had called in and said there were 2 pickups and several Hispanic males loading our neighbor's furniture into the trucks.
Hi, I'd like to report some suspicious activity.
The neighbor made note of the license plate number of the moving truck while police were on their way.
Okay, thank you.
While she is out watching the vehicles, waiting on the police to arrive, a woman comes out of the house and comes over and stated that she was the new owner of the house.
Hi, I'm the homeowner from next door. Did we disturb you at all? She says she was just selling some furniture.
The situation seemed to have already resolved itself by the time police arrived.
Didn't know, just trying to be neighborly.
They had also spoken to the lady that said she owned the house, and no, there was no suspicion, so everything was good.
But now, over a year later, detectives suspect there was more to this call than initially met the eye. They tracked down the license plate number of the vehicle that was in the driveway that night.
I ran the tags of the van. Came back belonging to Francisco Vacuna.
Bring him in. I want to talk to him.
Okay.
We made contact with him. He went by the nickname Vic, and he did remember going over there.
Let's come in, Mr. Blue.
Francisco Vicuna describes for police a curious encounter he had when an unnamed woman approached him on the block about purchasing furniture.
My family and I were out in that area trimming trees, doing some landscaping.
This woman approached them, asking them if they wanted to buy the furniture. And they bought every piece of furniture in the house for $300.
Only $300?
Yes, $300 for all of it.
But the furniture purchase was not the end of the transaction with this mysterious woman. And what Mr. Vicuna says next will have police scrambling for an explanation.
As we were about to leave, she asked if we would do a side job for her.
She asked if any of them would dig a hole for her in the backyard.
Francisco says they agreed to dig the hole.
We were anxious to know where he dug that hole at in that backyard, so we asked him if he would be able to show us, and he said he would.
And what Francisco shows them will give investigators their first concrete evidence.
It was about the size to fit about a 6-foot person.
The case took a turn as soon as they dug up that slab.
6 days after former Air Force officer Michael Giles is reported missing, investigators are pursuing a new lead. According to a man named Francisco Vicuna, aka Vic, someone claiming to be the owner of Michael Giles' house hired Vic and his uncle to dig a large hole in the backyard. Vic leads detectives to the house, where they find a strange addition to the hole that had been dug.
They found this mysterious slab, a 4-inch slab of concrete that's not in the ground like a sidewalk, a slab above the ground like maybe it set something like an AC unit on. But it wasn't the right size, and in the location it was, it made no sense whatsoever.
It looked totally different than the other cement, and it wasn't there before.
Detectives now suspect they are onto something big. But while authorities gather resources to search the house and property, detectives need to be sure of one thing: the identity of the woman who ordered the hole to be dug.
One of the individuals that bought the furniture, he was shown what we call in Texas a 6-photo lineup. Quinetta Harris was in that 6-photo lineup, and he picked her out immediately as the person who had sold him the furniture.
Law enforcement has their suspect.
Every single thing we found with Michael Giles came back, took Juanetta Harris.
But until they locate what's under that concrete slab, they're not yet sure what the crime is. On October 19, 2007, a week after Michael Giles has been listed as a missing person, Garland police, in cooperation with the FBI, begin poking around Michael's backyard.
The Garland Police Department got permission to search the property, took it around the area of the oddly floored concrete slab.
They brought a metal rod with a handle and a sharp point and went around the yard and poked holes all through the yard. And then they had the dog go around and sniff the holes. The dog pretty much ran over every hole there until it got to the slab, and then it started pawing at the ground and sort of digging a little bit. The dog was interested in them there.
He's got a positive alert over here.
An alerted K-9 unit gives the investigative team the go-ahead to excavate the slab. As the excavation begins, Detective Sweet and his team are in Detroit, ready to move on their prime suspect, Juanetta Harris.
The news was also out there. If somehow she found out this is being excavated, she knows that he's there. Our fear was that she may try to flee.
It isn't long before the excavation turns up a sure sign of the macabre.
They could smell decomposed human flesh. It's a pretty distinct smell. And they were smelling decomposition. So we know now for sure we've got a grave.
While the FBI evidence team is out there excavating, they find a decomposed body wrapped in a blanket with a throw pillow also in this grave.
They are able, on field examination, to see that there is a bullet wound to the head.
Michael was later identified by his dental records through the Department of Veterans Affairs.
Michael's family reels in the wake of this astonishing development.
It was a blow that was gut-wrenching. To find out that he had been buried in his backyard for over a year. And to know that I actually went by and knocked on the door and he was there. He was just back there killed.
Meanwhile in Detroit, Detective Sweet's team gets word of the gruesome discovery and they make their move.
We found a body.
Once the discovery of the body was made, Detective Sweet then was able to arrest Juanetta.
But before detectives can be sure they've caught their perp, an individual will come forward with an alarming admission that will have everyone scratching their heads.
A lawyer states, I have a client who claims to have killed Michael Giles.
18th, 2007. After police and FBI exhume Michael Giles from a makeshift grave behind his own house, his former girlfriend, Juanetta Harris, is taken into custody without incident. But under questioning, she resolutely maintains her innocence.
When I confronted her and told her that we had her identified as the person selling the furniture, she still denied.
One of the neighbors that was there basically identified you and said you were there and some Hispanic guys were moving the furniture out.
Me?
Mm-hmm. They picked you out of a 6-picture lineup.
The conversation then went to the concrete slab that she had headed for.
You contacted that concrete?
No, I didn't.
No.
Finally, I told her that that concrete slab was being torn up, and she sat very quietly looking at me, and I said, and we dug that up, and I told her, so Michael's not missing anymore.
Michael was under that concrete slab that you had walked down there.
I didn't have that walk down
And
there.
that hole that you had dug.
I didn't have that hole dug.
You're in a lot of trouble.
While Juanetta remains in custody at the station, detectives execute a search on her home and uncover a treasure trove of incriminating research and correspondence.
Detectives recovered cell phones, computers, records, anything that you can imagine that linked her to this crime and linked her to Michael Giles.
Authorities also find the power of attorney document granting Juanetta access to Michael's accounts, signed by Michael in September of 2006. But investigators know he had already been deceased at this time. How could a dead man sign a legal document?
We found that this was notarized by a lady in the Detroit area, and we made a point to locate this lady to ask her who signed these papers.
The notary is Detroit resident Patricia Turner, who police contact at her place of work.
Ms. Turner.
I tell her that I'm investigating a murder, and she is very uncooperative.
Mr. Turner, there are serious implications. Falsifying legal documents. And we can make your life very difficult if you don't cooperate. You need to tell me who signed Michael Giles' name in this document.
She was very cooperative after that. Told me who it was.
DeAndre Knight.
Detectives have never heard the name DeAndre Knight. Who was this mysterious man?
This was Cornetta's common-law husband.
Investigators are shocked to learn that Michael Giles hadn't been the only man in Cornetta's life at the time of his murder.
We'll be in touch.
This is a pretty intricate, detailed, plotted scam.
This eye-opening admission arms law enforcement with a provocative new theory. In collusion with DeAndre Knight, Quinetta Harris had gone to extraordinary lengths to milk the murdered Michael Giles for all he was worth. The plan involved duping Michigan financial advisor Donald Eberly.
They rented out like a hospital bed, had him in full bandages, had him where he could barely speak. She had a notary there.
He pretended he had a stroke. This was DeAndre, and he signs this information in front of Donald Eberly.
And then we followed him home and he put shirts on right and pushed him in the house. When Victor came and gave me the gun and told me to shut up. And then put the body in the bathroom and we left.
In order to verify a story that could change the face of a major murder case, Detective Sweet ensures that Erica's version of events jibes with the evidence they collected in the field.
So I told her, you're going to have to give me a little bit more detail than that. So, I mean, how did you kill him? She says, I shot him in the head.
They gave me the pillow and held the pillow while I shot him.
But as the questioning gets more detailed, Erica's replies became more suspect.
I said, I know you're lying. And we went through that, and she broke and admitted that the story wasn't true.
Once they started showing me the pictures of a guy and how he was buried, that's when I just started telling them. I met a lady earlier, and she asked me to come here and say all this.
When Erica's mother, Elizabeth, is contacted, she's shocked by her daughter's confession.
The police came to my house and said, your daughter been convicted of murder. I said, no, that's a lie. That's not true.
Elizabeth agrees to come down to the station where her daughter is still being held. After detectives explain the situation, they separate the two of them and conduct further questioning.
From the beginning, how did you first get started with this situation?
I was at home and I received a phone call.
Hello? Hi, is this Erica?
And she was offering me a job to be a private investigator.
We're investigating the systematic racism in the court system here in Dallas, and I'm wondering if you'd like to help with this worthy cause. Can we meet for an interview?
I had been doing a lot of job applications online. So when I got the call, I was just like, thinking, hey, I got the job offer. It seemed to be official, so that's why I went to the interview.
I'll let you know how it is.
Okay.
During the interview at El Centro College in downtown Dallas, the woman Erica met with laid out a plan that Erica couldn't have known might have landed her in prison.
She introduced a letter, that she had pre-wrote, and she had me to copy everything down. She told me the people that I would be meeting, and she told me to basically, act like, I did.
Detectives are floored by Erica's story. They leave the room to go speak with her mother, Elizabeth. As detectives explain the details of the crime to which her daughter had confessed, Elizabeth makes a disturbing connection.
And a light bulb goes off for Elizabeth. That sounds like Quinetta Harris.
According to Elizabeth, while she was serving time in jail on drug charges, she befriended Quinetta, who was in custody awaiting trial.
I was in jail with her, and she told me her story. I did 5 months, and she did 2 months.
How many conversations do you think you guys had?
We talked late at night. She just started being my friend, buying me stuff. They started asking me how many kids and stuff I got. She would ask me questions about in jail, so I was in jail. I should keep asking stuff about my kids.
What kind of questions about your kids?
She asked me how old was they. What you say, baby?
Quinetta Harris posted bond, she put her plan to frame young Erica Flores into motion.
Or somehow she got my home number.
She's very shrewd. So yes, to have her pull that off. We'll get her back here and we'll get over.
After releasing Erica Flores and her mother, Quinetta is swiftly returned to custody, this time without bond.
She was arrested for violating condition of bond, to have no communications, interference with the case.
But even though Quinetta Harris is now in the hands of law enforcement, she's not going down without a fight.
This woman just wouldn't stop. She was still trying to manipulate the situation, even from jail.
In April 2008, police discovered that Quinetta Harris had coerced a young woman named Erica Flores to confess to the murder of Michael Giles.
Quinetta had manipulated this young girl as a last-ditch effort to get out of jail. Once the detectives connected the dots, they arrested her again, this time without bond.
Quinetta Harris waits in jail for a year and a half, and on October 6, 2009, she faces a jury of her peers as the state lays out a case of prodigious greed turned deadly.
Quinetta, she killed him for everything. She wanted all that he had, and she was going to do anything to get it.
Prosecutors argue that Quinetta waited for the perfect moment to execute her plan as she visited Michael in his home.
At some point, Michael's asleep on that couch. Quinetta approaches with the gun, covers his head with that pillow, shoots one time into his head. After that, she wraps up his body, puts it in one of the other rooms of the home. She has the grave dug in the backyard, goes back to Detroit, basically assumes his identity, empties his bank accounts.
From that point forward, Quinetta went to great lengths to make it seem Michael was still alive.
Hello? We found out that she actually murdered him on July the 3rd, and that on July 4th, my mom did not talk to my brother, but to Quinetta, who had purchased a voice-changing machine.
Prosecutors also claim it was Quinetta who made the call to Michael's family, posing as a cruise ship patron who had found Michael's lost phone.
She made the phone call using his phone to keep us quiet down.
And Quinetta's twisted string of lies didn't stop there.
Quinetta had told Detective Sweet that her youngest child was my brother's child, and we found out that that was not true.
It was just totally unbelievable. I couldn't believe that a person...
Defense attorneys take the floor. They suggest to the jury that Quinetta's boyfriend, DeAndre Knight, was a far more likely suspect.
It was her position that there was a confrontation between Michael and DeAndre, that resolved itself in Michael being killed. There could have been a jealousy, love triangle going on.
But as the trial progresses, it becomes clear that evidence strongly favors the state.
Case against Quinetta was like an avalanche. I mean, it starts with a snowball, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and by the time the state was finished, this was just an avalanche of snow coming right at Quinetta Harris.
Quinetta's defense team is not so lucky.
No witnesses showed up. Not one single person showed up on her behalf.
But Quinetta is banking on the absence of gaining control of Michael's assets.
When we started the trial, DeAndre Knight was not to be found.
DeAndre is the link between Quinetta and the money and how she accessed that money.
The state isn't about to let their prize witness go without a fight.
We went up to Detroit. We went and yanked him up there and flew him back for trial. And he was about to testify against Quinetta because we were going to charge him with everything.
They were about to have the star witness come down there and look at her and say, "You did this. I was there. I know you did this." She knew that at that point, the only thing she can do is plead guilty and hope for something other than a life sentence.
On October 12th, Quinetta Harris takes a plea deal and the trial is stopped.
The plea agreement was that she plead guilty for murder and she would be sentenced to 50 years.
DeAndre Knight also takes a plea deal.
He did plead guilty and took a plea. He didn't do any time. He got probation and basically banned from the state of Texas.
Quinetta is remanded to federal prison. But for a justice system anxious to close the book on this bizarre case, one final twist awaits.
When Quanetta was officially sentenced, we thought that was the last we'd see of Quanetta Harris, but we were wrong.
In early 2016, authorities received startling news from the Department of Criminal Justice.
Quanetta Harris had been in prison almost 8 years, and there is a motion filed on behalf of Quanetta Harris. Her sentence was changed from 50 years to 8 years, meaning Quanetta Harris would get out of prison in about a month or two. It was signed by the new district judge, Judge Amber Givens.
Somehow the prison officials saw this and didn't think that was right.
Prison officials contacted the court and found out that the judge's signature had been forged, and the document was a fake.
It was a brazen bid for freedom by a person unpricked by conscience and heedless of the law.
In my 17 years of law enforcement, I've seen and come across a lot of things, worked a lot of cases. I have never seen a case like this.
Quanetta Harris is quite possibly the most dangerous, most egotistical, diabolical person I've ever dealt with in the criminal justice field.
But the law will now confine Quanetta Harris and the family of Michaeling the loss of a man who chose the wrong woman to love.
Only God knows the miraculous things that he was getting ready to do. The sons and daughters he was getting ready to have.
He was the best brother ever, honestly. He was. He was a really good guy, and had he lived, he would have made some woman a really, really good husband.